This is Sick and Wrong, America's #1 source for antisocial commentary. Brought to you by the Reach Around Foundation.
Good evening. Welcome to Sick and Wrong, the world source for antisocial commentary. I'm one of your hosts, D. Simon.
And I'm Lance Wackerly.
Welcome to podcast 23 here of Sick and Wrong. We're almost to the landmark 25 podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
I think the Reach Around Foundation is going to have to give us an advance once we hit 25, because I don't think they ever expected us to get 25 podcasts. So how you doing there, Wackerly?
Pretty good.
God, I've been in a fucking mood all day. Swear to God, it's like Misanthropy Friday for me today. It all started when I got to work this morning. Went to take a shit, which I usually do, part of my morning routine. And some other guy fucking comes into the stall next to mine, because there's two stalls. Dude. And it's like, I can't deal with having a shit buddy.
No, neither can
I just can't shit at the same time another man's shitting.
If I go in and I really have to go and there's somebody in there, I just squeeze my butt cheeks and go back out.
I will hold it on principle, because I just can't stand to hear another man shit. And this guy, to make matters worse, was having like explosive diarrhea.
Yeah, and who can't shit in quiet, no sound?
Exactly.
If I'm at home in my bathroom, I might grunt and groan in there, make some noise.
But when you're in public?
When you're in public, just keep your fucking mouth shut.
Or, or some people, will shit and then camouflage it while flushing the toilet. This guy was just like, ugh! Or, my favorite is that sigh after he just shot some out. And it just set me off all fucking day. I swear to God, I was walking out of there just ready to kill someone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I totally feel your pain, man. I hate that.
So I'll have to inject some of that hatred right here in this podcast. So I was reading in the news. A lot of things went on in the news this week. But one of the primary things that I noticed was an article about Richard Ramirez. If you might remember him as the Night Stalker, famous California serial killer.
Back in the 80s.
Back in the 80s. Well, I guess his death sentence is being appealed right now.
Come on.
In the California State Supreme Court. And, it's funny because I hadn't even thought of Richard Ramirez, probably in years. I mean, who's... What I was wondering is, where are they housing this guy? Where's this guy jailed?
That's a good question. Probably in
the celebrity
San Quentin. No. He's on death row.
Yeah, but you know how, they take, the notorious serial killers, like Charles Manson and, all the other ones... And they kind of put them in they're on death row, but they're not with the general population.
No, nobody in death row is in the general population. They all have their own cells.
But this guy's been sitting for 25 years.
Yeah. Well, since I guess 89 he was convicted, I read. Late 80s, something like that. So.
Well, let me get to the story here. I guess more than 20 years after Ramirez terrorized Southern California in a grisly killing spree, and he was prolific. He killed he was prodigious. I mean, he killed probably 13 women, I think.
He's probably accused of more, but those were the ones they proved.
Yeah, that they found. Night Stalker Richard Ramirez's challenge to his death sentence is reaching the state Supreme Court, finally, after 20 years. But when lawyers argue one of the state's most notorious death row cases in the Supreme Court's chambers this upcoming Tuesday, Ramirez's devil worship and eerie crimes will not be center stage. Instead... And this is why it's newsworthy. The focal point will be a pair of San Jose defense lawyers whose inexperience in capital cases and controversial behavior at the trial are at the heart of the effort to get Ramirez's death sentence set aside. So I highly doubt that they're going to be able to show enough evidence to mute Ramirez's death sentence.
No, they're trying to get a mistrial, right? So that has to be retried.
Well, I think that's what they're trying to do. Is they're trying to say that he had inadequate representation,
exactly,
and therefore should not be guilty. Tried for this death. He should not have been convicted for a death sentence. But what I wonder, can they overturn a death sentence like that? So what is he just going to get, life imprisonment?
Or he might go to trial again, huh? Right?
They can't retry him. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. So Ramirez now is 46 years old. He was condemned to die in 1989 for 13 Los Angeles area murders that stunned the state in 84 and 85. Ramirez was a Texas drifter who warned, this is my favorite part.
How to do, drifter?
Who warned when he was sentenced to death in the courtroom, he will be avenged. He was also charged later with a San Francisco murder linked to his crimes, in which he strangled, raped, shot, and slashed the throat of his victims.
Yeah, but the reason he was so freaky is because he would sneak into people's bedrooms. It's like your worst childhood fear, like when you have you can't go to sleep when you're a kid because you think something's gonna come in the room and get you. That's exactly what he would do. He'd
that
break
was
into
his MO.
Yeah, he'd break into the bedroom, immediately shoot the husband in the face, point blank, and then he would tie the woman up, ransack the house for valuables, and then rape her and then kill her
and brutally murder her.
Right after she's just seen her husband or boyfriend shot in the face. That's
I
the
even
first
read
thing
that
you get.
he would scrawl satanic messages on the walls in the victim's blood.
Yeah, but that's all just mental masturbation, in my opinion.
Yeah,
the real sick and wrong thing is the murder. He's sneaking in,
MO.
the MO.
Yeah. I mean,
before he does all that stupid bullshit. Yeah, whatever, dude. Write whatever you want.
Well, I think that's how he earned the nickname, the Night Stalker.
Oh yeah, he comes in at night
because he would stalk his victims coming at night, and then he would murder them.
The Boogity Man.
The Boogeyman essay.
Or the Bogeyman? Don't they call it a Bogeyman in whatever the UK where all our listeners live?
Well, now his bid to avoid execution rests on the performance of lawyers Daniel Hernandez and Arturo Hernandez, who are not related.
So it's not Los Hermanos
Hernandez y Hernandez. I guess those were the
Hernandez y Hernandez. No, Los Hermanos.
The two amigos. Well, those were the inept lawyers that represented him back in '84. And I read something in this article here. It said that combined, the two had less than 5 years of experience when they took over his representation. I guess one of them, Daniel Hernandez, died in 2003 now. But they both had a history of being held in contempt in Santa Clara County for their handling of cases, and their conduct resulted in the reversal of one San Jose murder conviction. I guess people were saying that the judge should have said that they were inadequate to represent Ramirez, but the family insisted that Hernandez y Hernandez.
Yeah, why wouldn't you just
lawyers.
get a public defender? They'd have to be better than these guys.
Well, isn't that what most murderers do? Is they're too poor to afford representation, so they just kind of get one appointed by the state.
Yeah, you're either poor and you get a public defender, or you're really rich and you get Johnny Cochran.
Yeah, and then
you
get
get
Johnny
off.
Cochran, then he would have gotten off, or Shapiro, or whoever OJ had. But yeah, I don't think Ramirez could afford them. Instead, they got Hernandez y Hernandez. What cracks me up about them is I wonder where his family even found them. Must have been I guess probably in L.A.
At a fiesta or something.
Their office was a taco truck, it says here. I guess Cheech and Chong were unavailable.
Yeah.
So they're just let's just get Hernandez y Hernandez. But, they don't really elaborate on the controversial behavior that the two lawyers engaged in. Which, I don't know. I'd love to find out, what they were doing.
I was researching this. I got a little bit of it. One of the things one of the Hernandezes did, I don't know which one, but he told the judge that he had to take a leave because he had to go to a funeral, but in actuality, he was in Europe on a honeymoon. So he was reprimanded for that. The other guy did something or other.
Well, they just weren't showing up for the case.
They both would be absent for long periods of time, yeah. But that was one of the specific times that they were absent, is he told them that, yeah, he had to go to a funeral, but he actually went to, the Eiffel Tower with his wife.
Lo siento, I'm just so sleepy. I'm sorry, Judge, I'm just so sleepy.
I had to take my mom to the hospital, and her car broke down, I'd say.
Come on, S.A. Yeah, it also says here that they were high for 90% of the trial.
All right.
No,
all right, this is going a little far.
Yeah, I'm making fun of this. But anyways, they're saying that because of the lack of representation here, the inadequate representation, that Ramirez should be entitled to a new trial. But I read that it's impossible. The chances of him overturning the death sentence is minimal. Yeah. I don't think there's really a possibility.
Well, because some of these women that he tried to murder lived. I guess he would just stab the shit out of them, think that they were dead, and then he would leave, and they would actually still pull through. That's what it said. And
really?
I read, yeah.
So were they witnesses at the murder? Did they testify against him?
And then the police got sketches from these women who actually ended up surviving.
So how did they catch him in the end? Who caught Richard Ramirez?
Actually, that's one of the funny stories I found out. So after, one of the final murders that he committed, or, home invasion, rape, murder scenarios, he was, it was in Mission Viejo, which is a neighborhood down south, sort of in between L.A. and San Diego.
So he was murdering probably the bulk of the women he murders in L.A., Southern California, but then he also came up to San Francisco to rape and murder a couple, too.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a drifter. He drifted.
He was a drifter. So about like 7 days after this final murder, he's roaming around the neighborhood still, where he attacked this guy and his fiance, trying to find a car that he could steal. And it's like, it's a ethnically neighborhood, Hispanic. Apparently he's Hispanic too, yeah. So maybe not the place you want to go looking to fucking steal somebody's car. Yeah,
that's probably one of the... I'm surprised he didn't go to like Beverly Hills or something, get like a Rolls Royce.
So here's what happened is, and I'm gonna
looking for an El Camino.
I'm gonna have to skim some of this stuff. So he's walking through his neighborhood, like going through people's backyards and shit, and he sees this red...
It's just night stalking.
No, this is during the day.
Okay, day stalking.
Day stalking this time. And he sees this red Mustang, and he's like, oh, cool. And he goes up, and the keys are in it, so he jumps into this car, and he's like, shit, the door's open, the keys are in it. He starts it up, but the problem is the Mexican dude who owns it, who it's like his pride and joy, is underneath the car working on it. So as soon as he hears it, a turn over, and the ignition goes, he pops out from under the car, grabs him, like by the neck, and
just pulls him out of the car.
Yeah, and Ramirez tries to drive away, but he sort of crashes into a fence, and the guy rips him out of the car and throws him on the ground. Ramirez ends up getting up, runs across the street to another Mexican guy's wife's car that she's in, tries to carjack her. Her husband comes out of the house, grabs like this fence post, I guess, like a metal fence post as he's coming out of the house, and like starts to beat the shit out of him. Meanwhile, the guy who owns the Mustang has his two kids, Jaime and like Julio, who are like 20 and 21.
He's getting the whole barrio
Dude,
against him.
He's got this like, Mexican lynch mob after him now. And like this goes on, and he's like running away, and they'll catch him and beat him up a little bit. And by the end of the story, he's got like 15 Mexican dudes from the
15
the hood
vatos just beating the shit out of him.
Just fucking chasing him down, beating the shit out of him. And the second guy who has the fence post finally just cracks him over the head hard enough that, he went unconscious. And then the two sons sort of knelt on his neck till the cops came.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't kill him. Because, I mean, they must have recognized him as a Night Stalker.
I'm sure when he hit him in the head with the fence post, he
probably thought he did.
Yeah.
It sounds to me that Ramirez should have stuck to night stalking rather than carjacking.
Yeah, and he probably should have stuck to like neighborhoods where a bunch of white pussies live. Instead of like Mexican tough guys who take the law into their own hands.
Well, if you look at him, he's not that tough of a... I mean, he doesn't have a
very
imposing
guy.
stature. Yeah, he's kind of small. He's kind of satanic looking, though. I mean, he's kind of evil
He's just
looking.
got that fucking prick look on his face where he thinks he's really evil. I guess he is really evil, so he's probably the only person who's justified in looking like that, but...
So in 1989, they convicted him for the death penalty. And he's been sitting on death row for the past 20 years.
Can I interject another funny point? So 89, He was convicted and thrown in jail. In 1996, he got married to some girl.
How the fuck does that happen?
She was the
dude got married while he was in prison?
Yeah, she courted him from outside the prison. She was like 40 maybe or something like that. 41. Freelance magazine editor with a bachelor's degree in English and an IQ of 152. So she's a smart one.
Dude.
And she was a virgin, and she was a raised hardcore Catholic, but had been, she converted herself to agnosticism. No, she's a white girl, red hair.
What I don't understand is obviously she sounds like an intelligent woman, but her choice of men seems to be lacking here.
You would think so, but check this out. So after he finally proposed to her in 1988, after she'd been trying to draw it out of him for a long time.
Does he get conjugal visits on death row?
No, that's one of the things they said. Is she was a virgin and she would remain so because he couldn't
consummate the marriage.
No, but listen to this. After he proposed to her, other women tried to steal him away from her, visiting him in prison and lavishing him with all kinds of attention. Doreen was the woman he married, often ran into them when she came came to him for her visits, and at least one woman threatened physical violence if Doreen didn't abandon her claim on the Night Stalker.
Dude, this fucking pisses me off. I don't understand this. So these women, they are crawling after him, breaking their pelvis to gushing fucking pussy juice to try to get on Richard Ramirez, who's a murderer. I mean, this guy murdered 13 women, and these women are like, oh, we want him.
You remember the guy from podcast blah, blah, blah we did where, he had the Morrissey on his webpage or his MySpace page, and he was trying to get back with his girlfriend, and we said, dude, girls don't like guys who listen to Morrissey. They like tough guy assholes, and this is the proof of it.
Yeah, but I don't fucking understand this. It's just like, I have a hard time getting laid, and I'm a normal guy with a good job. I haven't murdered anyone, whereas if you're Richard Ramirez or Ted Bundy...
They're the ultimate bad boys.
Ted
they
Bundy,
might murder and rape and murder you.
They might be on fucking death row, but apparently they have no problem getting women.
Right.
God, that fucking makes me mad.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah, I just don't understand society right now. Maybe I just don't get it. Maybe I should just go on a killing spree and then girls will find me attractive. I don't know how that works. Well, all in all, reading this article... So do you think he deserves a death penalty?
Yeah, I don't know why it's taken so long. Come on.
So do you think it's going to be reversed?
No, I don't.
So the California state...
He's just, I think, didn't that article come out on 6606? It was probably just his little last hurrah.
The California State Supreme Court seldom reverses a death sentence at this stage of the appellate process, which is likely to drag on for an additional decade in Ramirez's case.
God.
The state's position is that Ramirez...
I'll probably be dead before they kill him.
The state's position is that Ramirez received constitutionally adequate assistance of counsel, so they don't really feel that there's any need for a trial.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I
agree.
Personally, this guy should rot in prison. Actually, I think he should probably be put to death. I mean, he sounds like he deserves it. I bet you those Mexican guys regret not hitting him a couple more times.
Yeah, but there's no reason for them to go to jail.
So, to the chagrin of women across the country, I don't know how eligible Richard Ramirez is going to be now. I don't think he's going to be an eligible bachelor much longer.
I couldn't find out if he was still married to that woman.
Dude, that just fucking pisses me off. I don't understand it. I wonder how much ass Jeffrey Dahmer got in prison.
I think he got his ass chewed up.
Probably. Well, we must move on here. There were many articles in the news this week. Just many sick and wrong happenings across the world this week. One in particular is, did you see the pictures of the Al-Qaeda guy, Zakawi?
Oh, yeah, dude. They bombed the shit out of that guy.
Two 500-pound bombs.
But he was alive when they found him.
Yeah, I read that they pulled him on a stretcher and he still tried to escape and he was mumbling something.
Still trying to escape and stuff all his intestines back into his stomach.
But I love how the news puts a picture of his blowing up face.
Yeah. Remember Saddam's kids? They did that to them.
Yeah, it's just like, we just want proof of that. Yeah, Bush is all over there. Yeah, we got a victory in Iraq, but the war still has to be fought. Other than that, there's so many sick and wrong events. Much more important to discuss here on the show rather than the murder of a terrorist.
Just turn on CNN. You can see all that you want.
Yeah, exactly. So just to recap how the show works, Sick and Wrong is it's a competition between me and Wackerly. Over here, we scour various newspapers from around the world trying to find the most disturbing articles, and then we present them to each other. And the winner, person with the most disgusting, disturbing, repulsive article of the week, wins a case of beer. And that's determined by the listening audience. So make sure you vote at sickandwrongpodcast@hotmail.com. But since I started last week, I think you're going to have to kick it off this week.
I'll kick it.
So for podcast 23, I pass the mic over to Lance Wackerly.
All right, here we go. Akron, Ohio. Sort of near Cleveland. It's actually where a lot of my grandparents and aunts and uncles live.
I always like a good Midwestern article.
It's the hillbilly side of the Wackerly family. It's from there. Akron man gets 20 years again in forced impregnation retrial.
Ooh, I heard about this guy.
So this story is just more weird than anything, but it definitely has some sick and wrong components. John Goff remains unrepentant, even though jurors in 3 trials, I don't know, so it sounds like he got retried twice, found him guilty of forcibly impregnating his 16-year-old stepdaughter through artificial insemination. So this is not
how does that happen?
This is not a father stepdaughter rape story.
Well, technically,
it's much weirder than that.
It's forcible, though.
Let me read on.
Okay.
So Goff, in his end of his retrial this week, read a rambling 4-page statement saying that his stepdaughter, Shenna Grimm, what the fuck kind of a name is Shenna?
Shenna Grimm.
Continues to lie about what occurred, and that everything he has said has been misunderstood. So she was 16. What can she be even lying about? It's just, even if she totally agreed to it, it still was a very bad thing for him to do. So I don't know.
Well,
I think he's a little.
They're saying it was forcible. So I mean, I don't think there was consent here.
He's saying that there was consent, but it doesn't matter. She was 16.
It's her fucking stepfather.
Plus, she's 16. She can't.
Yeah, she's a minor.
It's statutory rape. Here's his one quote. I will not sugarcoat what has become the most ill-conceived plan since Enron.
Since Enron.
Totally.
This has the magnitude of Enron.
It's just completely an apples to oranges comparison. So yeah, a jury convicted him in April on the same charges. So he had this retrial, and it was the same exact charges he was convicted of: rape, sexual battery, and child endangering. Grimm testified in the recent trial. So that's the stepdaughter. She's now, I believe, 23. She testified in the recent retrial that Goff threatened to harm her mother, Narda.
Narda? Dude, who's naming these people in Ohio?
Know, man. I don't know.
Are your relatives named like these
No, my relatives
names?
have normal names. But anyways, so the stepdaughter said that he was going to harm the mom if she did not agree to the insemination. So he used like a syringe or a turkey baster or something. I think we've talked about the turkey baster method before on the show too.
So he forcibly inseminated her with like a syringe full of his semen?
This is a confusing story, yeah. Because was it forcible, or did he coerce her, or is that the same thing? It sounds like he coerced her. He said, like threatened to do something to the mom.
Threatened to hurt the mother if he couldn't stick a syringe full of his semen inside of her.
I'm still thinking it's a turkey baster just because it's funnier. But so she was actually inseminated twice by John Goff, artificially. The turkey
baster. How the fuck did he
baster.
let this happen twice?
And had a son, and she finally had a son in September of 1999. John and Narda Goff testified that Grimm wanted a baby, and that he inserted the syringe. Syringe, I guess. It's not a turkey baster.
I mean, you know what I wonder? How did he get... So do you think he jerked off and then took a syringe and just kind of like,
Sucked it up?
Sucked it up into the syringe?
Or did he jerk off
ready.
right into the syringe, into the top of it, and then put the
He'd have to have
plunger
good
in?
aim for that.
Yeah. Well, I
Now,
want
the
to know...
turkey baster, on the other hand...
Do you have to, refrigerate it? Or can you just leave it lying around in the syringe at room temperature?
I don't know. I wonder how many syringes he had.
Yeah, well, probably just one. And so this is the funny... What's not funniest to me, the most interesting part.
I love how you see humor in this there.
She had the kid.
So she still had the kid.
This wasn't like back in the 50s. This was in 1999 or 90.
Yeah,
it was
we have
1999.
abortion now for these situations.
So she had the son, and actually raised him for a while, I guess.
How old's the kid?
And didn't ever say anything about it. Everybody was just like, oh, she got knocked up, one night stand or something. Now he's got to be about 6 or 7, and he's been adopted by somebody else. What a fucked up kid, dude.
Dude, that kid's gonna... I wonder if that kid knows, his family background here. They're probably gonna wait till he's 18 to be like, so...
Yeah, but dude, when you're 7, it's not like you can just reprogram somebody. It's not like he's an infant.
No.
He knows some stuff happened.
So
So
you don't know if he was adopted when he was 3.
this guy, John Goff, they gave him 20 years in prison, and then This is also good.
Only 20
and
years.
The judge is making him register as a sex offender when he gets out, which I always think is great. So when he finally gets out and he has to like move somewhere, he has to go tell all his neighbors, "Hi, I'm John Goff, and I'm a sex offender. But I didn't rape anybody. I just used a turkey baster to impregnate my 60-year-old stepdaughter. So don't think I raped anybody or molest kids.
I'm not dangerous. I'm not one of them.
I'm just an artificial inseminator of stepdaughters."
And you know what I don't understand about these type of articles is what was his wife thinking? I mean, I'm surprised.
Narda?
I'm surprised Narda wouldn't try to put a stop to this.
Somewhere in here that I didn't underline says that they're kind of scared of the guy. He was like a violent, one of those dudes.
Jesus
Kind of had them
Christ,
under
dude.
his thumb.
Well, isn't it comforting to know that he's spreading his seed?
Yeah, and maybe this is just me, but he was 37 years old when this happened. Why would you want a kid that badly? That
At 37?
Yeah, why? At 37, do most men just like, God, I'm glad either if you had kids that they're already grown, or that if you didn't have kids, you're like thankful that you never had any.
So Narda might have been infertile. And so she might have been
She had the
infertile.
stepdaughter.
Well, she had the stepdaughter, but they didn't have a kid with each other, though.
Whatever, dude.
So, I think he's planning on spreading his seed. And the only way he could do it was with the turkey baster. And, I'm surprised he didn't just rape her. Why was it? Does it allay
in his
the crime?
mind, he still doesn't think this was like a bad idea. Or I guess he admits the bad idea, but he didn't think it was like a bad thing to do. He just thinks it was a bad idea.
It was a bad idea.
Right.
Like Enron. And the Enron case, that was a bad idea.
Yeah, or like when you sit down on the toilet to take a shit and there's like 3 squares left and you're like, well, maybe it'll be like a clean one and I'll only need 3 squares, and then you have like green apple splatters.
And then you need
and then you have to like wipe with the tube.
Than 3 squares.
You have to use the tube or something.
or your hand.
Or your roommate's towel.
Yeah, I could kind of see that. Well, on the sick and wrong scale.
That would be a bad idea, but you're not an evil person for doing that. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, now I understand your rationale here.
I wasn't just telling the shit story.
The analogy really works in this case. It makes a lot of sense. Well, on the sick and wrong scale, just because the ingenuity involved with the syringe,
twice,
I'm gonna have to give that an 8.5.
Okay,
maybe an 8.45.
I'll give it an 8.32.
You're giving me an 8.32.
2.
Well, I think I'm going to be able to rival that one.
All right, let's hear it.
My story is definitely sick. I don't know if it says it doesn't have incest and rape. I guess I don't know if technically if you consider that incest because it's a stepdaughter, but it's his daughter and he's a guardian, so I guess it's incestuous.
It's incestuous.
Mine doesn't have rape, but it involves a child.
Okay.
So it's filed under that category of great parents. All right, well, here's my article for Podcast 23. Headline: Murdered Elko, Nevada boy beaten and force-fed salt.
Salt?
Yeah, salt. Very interesting way to abuse a child here. Very unconventional. So this happened in Elko, Nevada. I don't know if anyone out there knows much about Nevada, but Nevada is another hotbed of white trash.
Right.
Much like, for the west coast of the United States, Nevada is probably our white trash state. I mean, we have Las Vegas, you have Reno, and I've heard in Reno it's the largest trailer park in the world. Did you hear about that?
Yeah,
the largest trailer park in the world. I mean, it's like miles and miles of trailers.
Well, Nevada's strange because they have a bunch of native white trash there they're from and live in Nevada, and then Las Vegas is like this giant white trash magnet from the rest of the country. All the white trash treks. It's like the white trash mecca.
Migrate there. Yeah, they migrate there.
It's like the Wailing Wall of white trash.
Yeah, to waste all the money that they don't have, that they could be spending on their children.
Right.
Well, a doctor testifying at a preliminary hearing for a woman accused of murdering her 6-year-old stepson said the boy had been beaten for weeks and was force-fed so much salt that he had a lethal level of sodium in his system. So get this lady's name here is Crystal Danette Hunt, 43 years old. She faces charges of first-degree murder and 3 counts of abuse or neglect of a child with substantial bodily harm. It's funny when you read something like this, her name, the name Crystal Danette Hunt, you're just like, okay, I think we're dealing with some white trash here.
Or a stripper.
Yeah, it just automatically denotes white trash. Crystal, Raven, Amber.
Yeah.
It's just like that white trash name. So she was arrested this happened in December. She was arrested in December on a felony child abuse charge after Kyle Hunt died at his home in Elko, Nevada.
That's the kid?
Yeah, Kyle. Kyle died
so he was
from
abused to death. I didn't get that impression.
Yeah, he was murdered. Kyle died from salt poisoning, compounded by blunt force trauma. The sodium level was high enough to be fatal in and of itself. There's also extensive evidence of blunt traumatic force injuries and evidence of forced eating. So
how do you even force feed somebody salt? Doesn't it at some point it just sort of rolls out of their mouth?
I don't understand. Was she like grabbing the Morton's container and just shoving it in his mouth and pouring salt in there? Was she like diluting it into water?
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't just choke.
Yeah, I don't know.
If it was just dry salt.
Well, Kyle had excess of 100 injuries on his body, from superficial scrapes to deep bruises.
Plus just big pussy boils from all that salt.
Yeah. Well, I guess okay, so this is what happened. Crystal Hunt would punish Kyle by making him drink salt water until he threw up. And I guess she did this on a regular basis. He said the boy's father, Charles, arrived home on December 19th to find his son just lying dead in his bed.
I guess Charles was not in charge.
Yeah, I don't think so. But as I read some more of this article, you'll see that this family situation would make a great sitcom, much like Charles in Charge with Scott Baio. So when the attorney was asked if the injuries were enough to kill the boy, the attorney said each individual injury, no, but in aggregate they could have caused his death. I guess the salt poisoning was the most lethal event. She said the normal levels of sodium in his body, in most bodies, range from 130 to 150. Kyle's were above 250. So this kid had so much salt in his body that his internal organs were rotting. His body was emaciated and had almost no stored fat. So for a 6-year-old kid, at the time of his death, he weighed 30 pounds. Isn't that kind of fucked up?
That's bizarre.
Well, I mean, dude.
So wait, all the moisture just left his body? That's why he weighed so little? He's just like a wispy skeleton?
Yeah, he was just like an emaciated skeleton child.
Where does somebody come up with this method of child abuse?
That's what I don't understand. Like, what is this, like a white trash child abuse thing?
I've never heard of that before.
I mean, whatever happened to the belt? Like taking off your belt and beating the kid?
The hickory switch out behind the woodshed.
Or something, I mean, it's this woman. I mean, what would cause someone just to be like, you know what? I hate you, and in order to punish you, I'm going to have to pour salt water down your throat.
No, but what I'm saying is, even so, the belt and the hickory switch, lots of people get that, but even in the world of like fucked up child abuse, like people always burn their kids with cigarettes or lock them in a closet for like 3 days. You hear about that all the time. So you know that they got that idea because other people had that idea. Yeah. But I've never heard of this before.
No, this is the first time I've ever heard death by salt.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just egregious. So there was fluid accumulation in body cavities where it doesn't normally appear. Basically, the fluid in his body had been sucked out of his cells and put in places it didn't belong. It almost seemed to me... He had like saline solution, just kind of sucks. So for a 6-year-old, he had a nice rack.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's funny? It's almost
Maybe that's
like...
why Charles didn't complain so much.
It's almost like they were preparing kosher meat or something. Yeah. To feed to the Jews that live down the street.
I just can imagine like woodland animals coming up and trying to lick him when he's out in the
yard. Like deer.
Right.
Like all the white trash dogs were just coming up and being like, I want to lick.
Him.
Well, Charles Hunt, the father, told the court that Crystal was the main disciplinarian in the family and made Kyle drink salt water until he threw up on a regular basis. Crystal Hunt's son, on the other hand, she had another son, Harold Leventree, testified that Charles Hunt was the main disciplinarian. He beat the kid and force-fed him salt.
There's a little mystery there.
So now it's Charles' word against Crystal's, and the son, Harold, is corroborating with Crystal.
I think it was Crystal, that bitch.
I think it was Crystal, too. So when defense attorney Roger Stewart asked Charles Hunt as to whether there's any drug abuse going on in the house, Hunt testified that he, Crystal, and Harold all have methamphetamine problems.
Oh, boy.
Doesn't that just make sense?
Yeah.
So the whole house.
Because how else would you have the energy to clean up all that vomit?
It's because you're so high on speed that's where I think the idea came for to force feed the kids salt. I mean, the woman was so fucked up. She's just like
some crank delusion that she came up with.
Just this crank delusion. She's like, the best way to punish this kid is to shove salt down his throat.
And nobody was there that wasn't high on meth to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Go to sleep. You've been up for 18 days straight.
Well, that's what I'm surprised. Like, Harold wasn't like, Mom, maybe you shouldn't be feeding little Kyle some salt.
Well, he was on the crank, too.
Maybe you should just spank him instead. Yeah, I wonder if that's a common...
Tina.
I wonder if that's a common punishment for meth heads. If it's just like
I said, I've never heard of it before.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. But, as I was saying before, it would make a great sitcom. So you have Charles, you have Crystal, and you have Harold, and then you have little Kyle getting force-fed salt. Who's in charge? Charles?
Yeah, but that name's taken. You gotta call it, like, the Salty Goddamn Fuckheads Family or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Meth addicts in charge? The White Trash Family in Nevada. So when the defense attorney questioned Charles Hunt of whether he was currently under the influence of the drugs, Hunt admitted, and this was in court, that he had done a line of methamphetamine that morning that was about the size of a matchstick. So the dude's just like admitting to the whole court, yeah, I'm high right now.
That's a lot of meth, too. Not
about
that
the
I would
size
know.
of a matchstick?
The length?
Yeah, I guess it was like the length of a matchstick. I don't know. So then after Hunt had testified, he was then subsequently arrested by Elko police officers and booked on a charge of being under the influence of a controlled substance.
What a dumbass.
I know. It's just, every time I read this, I'm just like, God, I'm so happy, so proud to be an American.
Yeah.
I mean, these are people, these are our fellow Americans. These are people that we live with. These are people that vote for George Bush.
It's a big country.
Yeah, it's a big country. People that live outside the states, don't judge us on this. Don't judge us based on this or George Bush. These are aberrations, okay? So on the sick and wrong scale, just because of the violent way in which this kid was murdered, I have to give this an 8.7.
No, that's definitely sicker than my story. I concede this week. That's like a 9 for me.
I mean they found this kid.
I'd like to. I guess I probably wouldn't like to, but just out of morbid curiosity, I'd want to see what the kid's body looked like at the end.
Well, could you imagine the autopsy on it?
He's got to look if he
like
if he's
a Holocaust victim.
Yeah, a Holocaust victim. Exactly. If he's 6 years old and he weighs 30 pounds,
that's like pounds.
That's like all just head weight.
Well, what are you supposed to weigh at 6 years old?
Like 90 pounds.
I don't know.
At least 3 times that.
30 pounds.
Maybe 80, maybe 70 or 80, but more than twice that, at least.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, he was definitely salty. I would say that.
Bastard Brian.
The bastard Brian. Well, people, we invite you to vote as to which article you found the most personally repulsive this week. Sick and Wrong Podcast at hotmail.com is the email. And speaking of email, we've been getting a lot. We've been getting a flood of emails this past couple weeks. People have been sending in articles. People have been commenting on the white trash terms from around the world, which I almost think we should do as a new segment of the show. It's part of Sick and Wrong is different terms for white trash around the world.
Or I would like to add in, like, white trash accoutrements, because I was just wondering, like, so we have all these slang for methamphetamines in the States, but I wonder what they call it in, like, Australia or Norway. Or
do they do speed in Norway?
That drug is just endemic throughout the whole world now, I think.
I know they do it in Australia. I think it's reached, epidemic proportions there, too. I don't know if they're force-feeding their children salt.
No.
But,
I would hope not.
Fosters. I think they force feed them Fosters in Australia.
That's not so bad.
Yeah, that wouldn't be that bad. But so we got an email here from Dan. I want to mention a couple of these emails. And the people that we don't mention your emails, we just don't have enough time. But keep sending them. Sick and Wrong Podcast at hotmail.com. So Dan sent us an email saying I know you've been talking about this for a few weeks now, but the UK king of chavs is a guy called Mike Carroll. He's a fat asshole prick who won £19 million on the national lottery. Did you hear about this guy?
No, but I know the type, right?
So yeah, he was some chav, English white trash that won like £19 million, and he's just having parties and fucking around and buying cars and wasting money, kind of acting just like I would had I won £19 million.
You know what happens to those people? Because that happens in the United States sometimes too. Then they those people after 5 years they burn out, and then they figure out that they can't buy anything else. They've already bought everything. And then they get super depressed because now they don't know what to do with their lives, and then they kill themselves.
And that's why you read about the suicides from people in
exactly.
lotteries. Yeah, it's because they,
They got ultimate wish fulfillment, right? They don't have anything to, think about anymore.
And they just can't handle it.
Right. Then they have to just sit there with their own thoughts, which are, not so great.
Well, Dan also confirmed that Welsh people are indeed hillbillies. He said that Wales is kind of like Alabama in the United States. And Catherine Zeta-Jones is kind of like the fit one from the Beverly Hillbillies.
Ellie Mae.
Yeah, Ellie Mae. Well, thank you, Dan, for sending that little tidbit of information in here. Also, the Devil's Hitman, our Australian correspondent. Last week we mentioned an article that happened in Australia, and we were saying, what are white trash called in Australia? Well, the Devil's Hitman here said that they refer to white trash as bogans or ferals. Ferals, which I actually kind of like that appellation.
Yeah.
Ferals.
Yeah.
Like a feral cat.
Right.
Well, that's a feral white trash
They've
person.
gone back to the wild.
Typically, they wear flannel shirts, flip-flops, have mullet hairstyles, and drink low-quality beer in large quantities. Sounds like white trash to me.
Kind of sounds like you and me, except for the flip-flops.
And the, I guess we do have, it does kind of sound like us.
Oh, well.
I guess we're feral.
Oh, well.
Well, thank you, Devil's Hitman, for sending that in. I'd also like to thank the guy, another guy sent in a comprehensive list of escort prices in Minnesota, because we were talking about the retard that's being pimped out in Minnesota. But I was looking through there, and I didn't see any retarded people for hire.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't see any retarded girls for hire. So
maybe she came in a premium, because that was the question, was how much she was charging.
Yeah, I imagine it's probably less than $30. But, I'd like to thank that guy for sending it in. And finally, I'd like to thank a guy named John for sending in the rap sheet on the granny who put the hit out on her kids. You got to see the picture on that.
Haggard?
Oh, it's choice.
Yeah.
It's his priceless picture.
I can imagine.
I think we're going to have to post it on the website, sickandwrongpodcast.com. Maybe right underneath the podcast so people can kind of check it out. Lends authenticity to the story.
Right.
Well, anyway, people, thanks for emailing us and continue emailing us. I think we're going to have to do that new segment if you live in another country, like maybe Germany or the Czech Republic or something, or Asia. I wonder what do they have white trash in Asia?
No comment.
There's
no white
seem to
people.
make sense. There's got to be a few white people over there. What are Asian trash called?
Right. That's a more coherent question.
Email us and let us know. sickandwrongpodcast@hotmail.com. And make sure you stay tuned for podcast 25, which is only 2 weeks away. We're going to have an extra special episode of Sick and Wrong. So something to look forward to. Until then.
Stay tuned for that.
Yeah. Hoo.
Oh.
Sleepless nights in anticipation. Until then, take it sleazy.